Alrighty, so if you are following along with us, we are at 1 Samuel chapter 22. If you're following along in your own Bible, then you can flip there. I think I did it right? It's going to be on the screen? Okay, I did it right this time. I've done it. I did a thing. But before we get started on that today, as I don't know how familiar you guys are with this particular story. You maybe know it. We're gonna really examine the depths to which Saul has fallen, and it made me think of something, and it made me think of a question that we need to really, really be honest with ourselves about. Right? This is a question we have to ask ourselves, because too often we ignore this question, and it always leads to tragedy. And the question is this: what kind of evil are you capable of? Why do I say it's so important? We're going to do a real quick study. We're going to take a real quick glimpse through history. We're going to go back to the easiest, by far, example of this in modern history, and that is, of course, into the late 1930s in Germany. See, the fact of the matter is, I don't know if you guys know this, most Germans at that time were Christians. They called themselves Christians. They went to church. In fact, pretty well all of Hitler's SS went to church all through their thing. They went to church and they were doing these things, and the reason I want to bring this up is because I think sometimes we think because we read our Bible, or because we come to this place, we do these things, that somehow we've become inoculated to the evil of this world. But I want to let you know, the devil wears a smile, not a snarl. He's trying to trick you, not scare you. I heard it said this more recently, and I thought this. You've probably heard it before, where people will say, people are mostly good, and I've many times from this very pulpit I've said, no, people are not good. We know they're not good. But I heard someone say it like this, and I thought, you know what? Actually, I do agree with this. He said, people are usually pretty nice, and I thought, aha, that is perfect. That's actually great, because I think the devil can be nice. I think the devil can be nice because guess what? Nice things are the things that draw us in. Things that are nice are the things that make us feel better about the decisions that we've done. Do you really think, how popular of a speech do you think it would have been? Because remember, I want to point out, Hitler was elected. That means he had popular support. But how popular of support do you think it would have been if he would have immediately come out with his final solution? Right from the get-go. It wouldn't have, but it's the little things, time after time after time, that slowly erodes and slowly grinds away, and we just keep making excuse after excuse after excuse, especially in the church. We allow these things to come in, little grains of sand at a time, one little thing at a time, and it's a really big problem. We need to be able to be honest with ourselves and examine in our own hearts what is going on. Because if we don't, we're setting ourselves up for failure. Now with that, I want to get right into the scripture today. And hopefully you guys will see the links that I'm drawn to here. It says, chapter 2, 22, verse 1. See, David left Gath. Remember, Gath was the city of his enemy. And he escaped to the cave of Adullam, so he's now a caveman. And when his brothers and his father's household heard it, they went down to him there. And all those who were in distress and in debt or discontented, they gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. Again, this is the draw of David, right? He's a good man. He's got good values. He's got a good heart. He's a man after God. And that's drawing people in. People are attracted to that. And it says, from there, David went to Mizpah in Moab, and said to the king of Moab, will you let my father and mother come and stay with you, until I learn what God will do for me? So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him as long as David was in the stronghold. But then the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay there in the stronghold. Go into the land of Judah." So David left, and he went into the forest of Hereth. Okay. This opening passage, these opening 5 verses, is about David. And again, we get to see once again the kind of man that David is, the kind of things that he values, and we're going to see, especially later on in David's life, he's also going to address this question: what kind of evil is he capable of? But we see where his commitment lies right now. It's a commitment, once again, to serving God. So much so that when a prophet from God comes before him and says to him, "You need to go back to the land of the man who's trying to kill you," David is so committed to the things of God that he says, "Of course, I live to serve the Lord," and he goes. Okay? Now, if you ever wonder you ever gone and got your blood pressure tested in one of those things at the drugstore, and they got that thing along the top that says, "Here's all the different ranges"? That's what this story is. It's helping us to contrast. This is where we should be. We should be ready to serve. We should be ready to do the right thing. This is giving us this, and it's going to be used as a contrast to the rest of the story. So let's look at it starting in verse 6. It says, "Now Saul, he heard that David and his men had been discovered. Saul was seated, spear in hand, under the tamarisk tree on the hill of Gibeah, with all of his officials standing at his side. And he said to them, 'Listen, men of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you've all conspired against me? No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me, as he does today.'" Saul has gone he's completely paranoid at this point. He's done. His most trusted officials, the people who have been there with him time and time again through wave after wave of enemy, those who supported him when things were difficult, those who support him when it's easy, like these are the people that were always there for him, and he's turning against them because he's become so paranoid. And this is a danger we can find ourselves in. You think, "Oh, I would never get that bad." He didn't start here. Who was Saul? He was the one of every man in all of Israel that was chosen to become king. He was the best of them. And this is what happens. When you don't reflect on self, when you're not constantly picking that apart, it was one foot after another until suddenly he's in a place unrecognizable probably to if he were able to go back in time and talk to his younger self wouldn't believe what he became. He became so monstrous. But it says, "But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with Saul," remember that guy? He was the guy that was there when David was at the tabernacle as well. He was standing with Saul's officials, and he said, "I saw the son of Jesse come in to Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him, and he also gave him provisions and the sword of Goliath the Philistine." So then the king sent for the priest of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, and all of the men of his family who were priests at Nob, and they all came to the king. And Saul said, "Listen now, son of Ahitub." "Yes, my lord," he answered. Now, I want a quick pause here. And a nice quick refresher, because this is going to be important as we get into this. David went and fled to the king of Moab to protect those that were being persecuted and attacked. He sought their protection. He sought to be responsible for all of them. He wanted to make sure that their safety was guaranteed. He carried the burden. I want us to see that as we get into this, because this is what's so now he's gone all paranoid. He's brought these priests before him, and he says, Saul said to him, "Why have you conspired against me?" What did he do, remember? He inquired of the Lord and gave him provisions. "You've conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, giving him bread and a sword and inquiring of God for him, so that he has rebelled against me and lies in wait for me as he does today." And Ahimelech answered the king, "Who of all your servants is as loyal as David?" First off, it's the truth, but I can understand why Saul's wrath comes after this. You don't want to hear that the most loyal person to you is the one that you are now calling the rebel and this horrible person. Who is more loyal than David, the king's son-in-law, the captain of your bodyguard, right? You put your life in his hands, and he's highly respected in your household. Was that day the first time that I inquired, first day I inquired of God for him? Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant or any of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing at all about this whole affair, right? The priesthood, what is their job? To serve God. They don't know what's happening in the court. They don't know what's happening over here. That's none of their business. And they don't really know that Saul is spinning out of control at this point. He's mad. He's a mad king. I don't mean mad angry. I mean mad. Whoo, he's crazy. But the king, so I know nothing about this whole affair. Verse 16, but the king said, "You will surely die, Ahimelech, you and your whole family." Now again, let's go back to Germany. Do you know who made up a bulk of the police forces? Regular men and women, right? It was regular men that were just hired on to be police officers, and they were given good training, and they thought, yeah, and they had good relationships with their neighbors, and they got along with everybody, and then one day they were given an order. Okay, so if you have a Jewish neighbor, we need to know, because we need to get rid of them. They can't stay here any longer. Okay, boss. And they did it. Why? Because they didn't ask themselves whether or not it was the right thing to do. They just said, oh, seems simple enough. I guess I can forgive this one little transgression, because how bad is it really? Of course, we have the benefit of hindsight to see it was one step after another, after another, after another. It went from just saying that you had neighbors to then hating your neighbors, then to hating a whole group of people, to then it's okay that we're exterminating an entire group of people. And remember, these were people that were going to church every Sunday. We are not immune. I want to make that clear. We are not immune. We have to do our due diligence. So the king orders the guards at his side, turn and kill the priest of the Lord, because they too have sided with David. They knew he was fleeing, and yet they did not tell me, and this is the greatest sign of bravery yet. It says the king's officials were unwilling to raise a hand to strike the priests of the Lord. Why? Because they knew that these men were innocent. They knew that you didn't do evil for evil. Right? Even if they had done something wrong, which they hadn't, they were innocent, and they knew they were innocent. Why would I commit such an atrocity against those who serve God? Saul, what are you doing? We can't kill these people. But here's the truth of the matter. Then the king ordered Doeg, you turn and strike down the priests. And so Doeg the Edomite turned and struck them down, and he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. Why did it say the linen ephod? He's trying to say he killed the holy people that were there. He killed Ahimelech and all of his family. Straight up murdered them. Why? For the great sin of going to God and helping one of the Lord's chosen. Helping one of the Lord's anointed. Doing the Lord's will. They were murdered by a king supposedly under the Lord's, who was supposed to be submitted to the Lord. Right? He was under the reign of God. Friends, this is another good point here too. This was just Saul and one other guy. Right? It said the rest of the officials weren't willing to do this. It doesn't take a majority to destroy a nation in this case. It took two people. One who was angry and crazy, and then another who would listen. That was it. That's all it took. If you're not vigilant, we can fall for that as well. He also put to the sword Nob, by the way, which is a town. It's the town of priests. It's a whole city. It was a whole village. It was a whole group of people. Now, do you think that Doge went there and did that by himself? No, he brought the army. And they slaughtered the men, the women, the children, and infants, the cattle, the donkeys, and the sheep. To this point, this is the farthest Saul has slid. We have David on one side, who is desperate. He's going to the leader of his enemies, the king of Moab, to seek refuge because he wants to protect those that he's responsible for. And we have Saul, who has those that he's responsible for, and instead he murders them out of rage and anger. What kind of evil are we capable of? Oh, it would never happen to me. I would never do that, says most people. But at the end of the day, most people, right, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not, I'm going to take you are who you are today, tell you to go kill someone, and you'll be like, okay. That's not how it happens. It's one little step after another, and they slowly change you, and they slowly corrode your mind, and they slowly make it so it seems okay. But it says, but one son of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, he escaped and he fled to join David. And I want you to listen. Hear David's response. He told David that Saul had killed the priest of the Lord. And then David said to Abiathar, that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul, I am responsible for the death of your whole family. Stay with me. Don't be afraid. The man who wants to kill you is trying to kill me too. You will be safe with me. Maybe you've been here in your life, okay? And things start to go wrong, and life gets difficult, things start falling apart. I want to ask you, because all of us have faced challenges, and I want to ask you, how did you react? Did you react like Saul? Well, they did this to me. They made me behave like this. They caused my issues. They did this. Or did you do the David? It's all in here. It was me. It was my burden, my responsibility, my issue. I need to fix this. I feel like it's all too common today, and you see it in the news, you see it all over the internet, you see it in the way that people talk to each other. It's so easy and so much more preferable to blame the people around you, to blame the system that we live in, to blame local governments, to blame schools, to blame anything but yourself. It's so easy because it means I get to be a victim and I'm righteous in my crusade. It's so much more challenging to be like David and say, you know what? I need to shoulder this. I need to make change. I need to make my life better. And I'm the only one that is capable of doing that. It's something that we've been trying to reinforce in Claire since we first started teaching her anything is, you know what, Claire? You're the only one that is responsible for your behavior. You're the only one that's responsible for your happiness, and you can't expect the world to bend to you. But for some reason we do so often. And friends, I know it doesn't seem like a big deal, but when you externalize all of the oppression, when you externalize all of your problems, when you externalize all of your issues, that's what makes it easier to go, well, you know, maybe they are people that we just need to get rid of. It doesn't happen overnight. But do you think if those same people, if they would have said instead, you know what? No, like I'm the one responsible. This is my burden. I have to take this on. This is my challenge. I need to make the change. You know, I think if that would have been the attitude, we would have seen a very different outcome. And in fact, we have stories of those individuals who did try and make change. And we celebrate those people in history today. We look at them and we say, those are inspirational. Those are our heroes. Those are the people we want to be like. But how much do we really want to be like them? Because the things they did were really, really hard. The things they did were darn near impossible. Okay? And one of the things that they did was each and every day they had to ask themselves, am I prepared to go through this again? Am I prepared to keep carrying this again? Or do I want to just take the easy route and start saying, you know what, it's their fault, 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 it's that fault. One's easy, one's hard. David's path, can you imagine how hard that must have been? He had to go live in a cave. Then he had to go seek refuge in the court of his enemy. Remember, this was the guy he literally fought wars against. And now he's seeking refuge with him. Why? Because he understood that greater than his pride was the burden that he carried. Are we willing to do the same? Because until we're willing to acknowledge that, yes, I may be nice, but if I don't control this, if I don't take responsibility, if I'm not willing to do this, then it could lead to great evil. Unless you understand that you are capable of that, you will never understand why it's so important for you to fight against that each and every day. And you know what? The good news is we have Jesus Christ on our side. Jesus Christ, who helps us each and every day when we wake up and it seems even more challenging. God, how do I move forward? God, how do I deal with this challenge? And Jesus is there to help us carry that burden. We're not doing it alone. And we have a church where we can come together and say, church, I have this burden, I have this challenge, I have this difficulty, I need some help. And we carry it together. Let's learn from Saul and realize that even the best of us can go absolutely wrong, right? Even the best of us can get corrupted. Even the best of us are capable of great failure, especially when we try and go it alone like Saul did. Let's instead be like David. Trust, love one another, care for each other, trust the Lord, and let him lead us. And just like he led David to prosperity, just like he led David to the golden age, he'll lead you too. But you got to be willing to do the work. And it's not easy. Being a Christian's not easy. But it's worth it.